You know, it's so weird. The flat earthers say there is no curvature.
So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. It's officially an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator. A little chubbier. It's like pear-shaped. So it turns out the pear-shapedness is bigger than the height of Mount Everest above sea level. So now what I'm doing is baffling you with bullshit.
But that's all emotional and, gets to a certain point where you require actual natural scientific evidence.
Of course, to do this experiment, you gotta measure the angles. The Greeks had the angles, okay? In fact, geometry translates to ancient pizza. So one of the things that should be obvious, if you think about it, if you send a ship straight out to the horizon, if you think about it, eventually it begins to disappear until it's no longer visible beyond your horizon. Now you should ask yourself, what kind of surface would produce that result?
Isn't it amazing that after I started to agree with you, I got these curtains and, huge, huge mics. Huge mics.
Oh, seafarers knew this. So, however flat they would have imagined the Earth to be, they couldn't have accepted it to be completely flat, because otherwise you would never not see the ship. Okay?
Over the horizon, they say that when a ship is receding away from you, the hull disappears before the masthead and it slowly goes up like that, as though it's going over the curve of the Earth. And that was one of Aristotle's first proofs that they used for the ball Earth. That was before telescopes, binoculars, or zoom cameras existed. Nowadays, you can test that for yourself. You watch any ship going away from you until it completely goes over the curve beyond the horizon where you can't see it, and then you take your zoom instrument and you will be able to zoom completely back on the ship, hull and all the way back into view, proving that when something disappears beyond the horizon, it hasn't sunk below the curvature of a convex sphere. It has simply gone beyond your perspective as far as the law of perspective allows. So just depending on the strength of your instruments, your height, and the conditions of the atmosphere while you're watching, you'll be able to see a shorter or further distance. And when the sun is going away from us, as Crone was saying, we're not spinning. It is literally going away from us. And just like a plane or anything else, it starts to go down on the horizon, down, 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 until it completely disappears. And now those planes that are doing that are not about to crash into the Earth. They're not curving under the ball. Otherwise, you'd see the bottom of the plane. You don't see the bottom of clouds either. Clouds curving over. What you see is point perspective. Like any artist knows, everything converging to the one center point of wherever you're looking at that time. Just like in a narrow hallway, the edges, the sides come in to a point, the ceiling comes down to that point, and the floor rises up to that point. And that's just how our vision works. And that's why a boat going away from you seems to disappear over the curve of a ball. If you've been told it's a ball, then that's what you're going to believe. But if you get out a zoom camera and you zoom the entire thing back into focus, then you can see that's not what happened. And with the sun, as the sun is dipping down, you got to get a really good camera, but it can be done. And there are examples of this on YouTube. You can zoom it in, and the sun, which was either completely disappeared, half disappeared, you name it, on the horizon, will rise up on the horizon. The sun hasn't risen up. You've just changed your perspective by looking at it through a zoom camera.
But what we do know is that the Earth and the water is completely flat, for as far as we can see and as far as we've measured. And the horizon is completely flat, as far up as we go. All amateur rockets and all amateur balloons sent up over 20 miles, as high as they can go, the horizon is flat all the way around, and it rises to the camera all the way up, rises to the level of the camera. Now, this is totally impossible on a ball. No matter how big the ball was, as you rise up, you have to look down to see the curvature. look down to see the horizon. But what actually happens if you go up in a hot air balloon, the horizon rises right on up with you the whole way up. Just keeps on coming up at eye level as high as you're going to go. That's just impossible on a ball. If you think about it, if you're on a ball and you're in a hot air balloon or an airplane, you should not be able to see out your window, straight out your window, the horizon.
Fuck yeah, I do.
You should have to look down, further and further down, the higher you ascend to be able to see that horizon. But you'll never look down to the horizon on the Earth. It will always rise up to your level. So the skeptics want to say that, well, if the Earth is flat, my eyesight should be infinite. And, well, your eyesight's not infinite, regardless of how good a telescope you fasten to it. The atmosphere is not transparent. You can imagine the haze over a road on hot, humid days. The same thing happens. All telescopes are going to blur out long before you can see, hundreds or thousands of miles like that. You can, however, see much farther than would be possible on a ball of 25,000 miles in circumference.
So that's not a disproof of the flat Earth that you can't see, thousands and thousands of miles. But you can, however, see hundreds of miles sometimes, like you said. And if you can, there's reports of being able to see almost 200 miles. At that distance, there should be like 4 miles of curvature. So people have seen things that you absolutely should not be able to see on a...
You don't ask, is the science right? You ask, should we have carbon credits? You ask, can we find the curvature? Sorry.
That photographer has been photographing several such horizon skyline views as well. That particular one, I think, was 60 miles away, and you can do the curvature formula and it figures out to several hundred feet that it should be below the horizon, but it's not. There's many more. Mount McKinley's one good one in Alaska. People are able to see that, and we've got several photos on my forum of it from 130 miles away. Almost the whole thing should be beneath the horizon based on the ball formula, and it should be leaning back significantly if we're on a ball. But it's completely level, completely flat, and you can almost see the entire thing. The bottom part of the horizon will disappear, objects near the horizon will disappear in the distance. People will ask about that often, and that's just natural. If you watch a girl walking away wearing a dress, first you'll see her shoes disappear as she gets a quarter of a mile away, and then her ankles a half mile, and then it looks like a ghostly dress is just floating for a while, and then halfway up the dress is gone. And that's just perspective doing its thing, and you can see that happen. But again, the deniers, the ball earth skeptics, they'll come in and say, oh, see, I can't see the bottom of her legs, or, oh, I can't see the bottom of the boat. That means she's behind the ball. But it's all perspective. Any artist knows this. If you know about point perspective, it's exactly how the horizon works. It's the vanishing line of our perspective. Just like if you look at a hallway, a long hallway, the walls on either side of you are going to tend towards the middle, and the ceiling and the floor are going to tend towards the middle vanishing point, and that's what you're looking at. That's what a sunrise and a sunset is, a moonrise and a moonset. That's what's happening with those ships over the horizon. That's what's happening with the girl walking away from you. It's all just perspective.
Yeah, I think it was 60 miles away, and he called it a mirage. Now, a mirage is a genuine phenomenon that happens, but the picture is inverted when a mirage happens.
Exactly.
And the Chicago skyline was perfectly normal, and a mirage would you'd usually find it, well above the actual image, whereas this image is exactly where it should be, right on the horizon.
Unfortunately, I can't check for curvature myself by going to sit at the seaside with the camera in my pocket, or a slightly better zoom lens camera, or a telescope, because then I'd have to give up my acting gig, and I'm enjoying the gravy. And I love mocking people by pretending I'm one of the most interesting young guys on earth. I plan to do it in 2025 with a couple of friends and have a naked picnic.
The only time that we ever see curvature is in NASA's photos or videos that they're giving us, which are clearly CGI.
When you're in a plane, the horizon rises to your eye level, and some people saying they might have seen the curvature at 35,000 feet out a plane window have to take into account the curved glass and the fact that the horizon is at your eye level. Now, if the Earth was a ball, no matter how big it would be well below your eye level at 35,000 feet. It would remain where it was, the horizon, and as you rose up, you'd have to look down and down further the higher you rose. But you find that doesn't happen at all. You can rise straight up in an airplane at as high an arc as you can, keep your eyes fixed on the horizon the whole way up, and it's going to be rising right up to your eye level all the way. That's only consistent with a flat plane. So people may see curvature in wide-angle lens photography, the curve of the window, this very slight curve. Most of it is just confirmation bias. They're looking at a clearly flat horizon, and they may see some little curve of the windows, or they're seeing a fisheye lens and not equating it as such, and claiming they've seen the curvature. But take another look and you'll see that the horizon's always flat.
Okay, I'll tell you why I had to deal with Eric here, besides the fact I'm completely attracted to him. I just thought, I gotta deal with this. So I showed him a picture of stuff, and you know, the statistics. You know, he didn't know what he was talking about, and so when I showed him and I told him it's like this, so you do the math, right? That's exactly what the correct formula shows, and not his formula, which is from NASA, but it's wrong and misinterpreted, and what he says it claims to show. So let me think. I have to ask. A mile, how much curvature would you have? Yeah, so you get gravity drop. Yeah, right. And you get curvature. Yeah, so both of those. You're really smart, Joe. Really smart. Isn't he smart, Eric?